Thank you so much. What a great day and having all these thought leaders amongst us, great discussions. And what particularly struck me in the last keynote that we had with Mr. Malik was, speaking was the largest reskilling project was COVID, that was really profound. And here we are discussing the importance of, learning and development in today's time. So let me begin, from my left side, I come to you, Ashish. Training and development has become a big conversation. Of course, it's become much more pronounced and relevant, but that was not always the case. If you jog your memory, say 5-6 years, not more than that, how has it panned out? And in between came COVID, how do you see that, entire premise of and the journey of it, the evolution?
Thanks. I think that's a wonderful question. As a person, I'm very reflective, and sometimes I believe is training the right word to express what we're trying to do. And that what takes me back to memory. And it says 15-20 years we thought training. And what was training? It was content. You developed content and you delivered content. But life has really moved from training to learning, and both very similar words, but very different way in how you do that. Learning is all about mindset. Learning is all about creating a culture which allows learning to happen. And I think it's the biggest shift that I have seen. And I'll just take maybe an example of why that led to that shift from training to learning. 20-25 years or 30 years back, it was more industrial age or industrial space. We will have more manufacturing. You had to train people. Then came the IT in the early 2000s, and now is digital era. Digital era is all about creating bite-sized learning and self-driven learning to drive a culture of learning. That's how I see it.
Gaurika, starting with you, the same. If you've been part of different organizations, and if you have to sum it up, the journey of the evolution of this training and learning, how do you see this?
So thank you. And I think while you were talking, I was thinking that there was a time when learning was about going to an offsite, taking time off work, and it was actually about team building. So everybody just went out, had fun, and they came back from a learning program.
So a get together.
Yeah, it was a get together. And anytime anybody wanted to meet, they would just push in a facilitator who would do an outbound. And that is what learning really was, or training was in the era in our country, in the PSU era. That's what the first thing that comes. And that's how I think we started calling it training and development. And you're right, we've moved to learning. And today, just see what learning is. We can just do a virtual bite-sized session. We can learn on the phone. We've got nudges coming to us. We've got gamification. We've got avatars. We've got the metaverse now that we're talking about. So I think learning's really come a full circle. So I think it's starkly different from what it used to be. And it's all about creating learning experiences where the learner really wants to invest in self. I think that's a short way of putting it.
Coming to you, Ruchi, your quick thoughts on it?
So as very rightly said by my co-panelist, it's all about the learning mindset that one creates. So I truly feel that learning earlier was a good to have, as Ms. Tandon just mentioned. But now it's totally a survival skill, a must-have for the sustainability of the organizations. I come from a service sector industry, wherein knowledge workforce is our true asset. So it's very, very important that, for any company to sustain in the long run, to drive our dynamic business models, our employees must be upskilled. And also another, thing is that earlier there was a lot of focus on content creation, get hands to good content, give it to your employees, deliver it very well. But now I think it's about content curation, that out of plethora of content that's available, how do you find the right content to be delivered to the right person when they need? So I think that's how it's evolved.
Suvendu, when we were having this discussion, you said out to 5 years, I'll go to 30 years, Now, give us that sense, how have you seen it changing over the years?
Yeah, so thank you, Businessworld, for this opportunity and such talented people sitting next to me. So, when I started, say 30 years ago, it was a blackboard, and mostly it was operators training and very few leadership offsite, as you said, something like that, which is more on vision mission. It was very structured, driven by the organization. To what I see today, the training is something which is in my own control, self-paced, self-driven. The blackboard remains the same, which is the screen of my mobile phone. But the whole evolution of training has changed. Call it any name, training, learning, capability. It has evolved, and more so in the current context of the disruptions which the business world keeps seeing. We just saw one in the last 2 years. It has magnified its importance. It is a lot more granular, lot more driven by unit economics, and lot more focused. And organizations are investing a lot of money, more on training, more on learning than on hiring. And that was something which I was taught, by my MD when I assumed the role of HR in the initial days, head HR, that, where do you want to invest? Do you want to invest in hiring or you want to invest in learning? And I think we have reached a stage where learning is the most invested thing, because we know that if we have to manage the change, it is the most important tool that we need to work with. Thank you.
Finally, Kavita, my first question, final comment from you. Your thoughts on this?
Thank you. Well, I think largely it's all been covered, but few things which I believe. Traditionally, training was more of a KRA of HR. And it was more of, let's put a program so that we are doing something. And like rightly said, it used to be outbound. Ye bahut kaam nahi kar raha hai, put him for a training session. Suddenly the guy will transform and come. Nothing used to happen. But it was more of a one-day session, go to outbound place, do a party, come back. I think by the end of the session, you would remember what lunch you had, what networking you did. And it was more of an off time given by bosses. See, you've done a great job, so I'm sending you there. Today, aligning with business, business imperative and training has actually come on a table where we are sitting and saying that if the business has to grow this much, this is the kind of inputs required. So the alignment with business for every training that you do, training seen as an investment and as a serious activity, not just a vision, mission statement or a value thing put on the boards and the walls of the company. I think it is all about putting an understanding that talent war is very intense. If people have to survive, if each one of us see another 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of working, I think it's important for people to understand that we need to be skilled. And the complexities have also gone up with multiple forces. So there is multi-generation working in workforce. There is contingent workers who are there. There's technological disruption that has happened. There is a data tsunami. People don't know how to handle it. Post-COVID, there is 9x data that is available in everything that you do. So, the sheer ability to handle your own day-to-day work requires you to go back and learn. Today, if each one of us as professionals are not doing at least 8 hours of learning, and forget about what organizations are doing, self-learning, we're not going to be employable. And I think training has actually, from then, a vacation picnic to being so serious for your survival. I think that's the journey that has happened.
From a vocation to a real centerpiece of organization's culture, of course, a lot has changed. Ashish, there's also this case of making an organization always ready, where people are willing to learn. There's a non-stop learning, a continuous learning that happens. One, that culture has to be built also, over a period of time. What's the PayU story there? How do you build that culture? And when you select the programs of, training and development, what factors do you look at, to make those impactful for the employees?
I think this is a great question. And I'll just build on what Kavita said. About a few years back, a training was an HR head's agenda. What's changed after COVID? It is CEO's agenda. to move learning. Now, when I mean learning, there are two parts of it. One is the culture building of learning at every stage. And second part is what content to deliver. And I'll break this answer into two parts. So if I just take the PayU story, in last 2 years, it has grown 3x in terms of what we are processing, in terms of the businesses we do and so on. What it means, you need new people, new skills, and who can scale very, very fast. Is it available in the market? The answer is no. So the realization that you have to groom talent internally becomes an extremely important thing, that it's build versus buy talent. Once you have realized that mindset, what you do is every part, starting from when you have an employee meeting, when you have a performance discussion, when you write the development plans, or whether you're having any discussions with them, you build the mindset of curiosity, action planning, and delivery. And that is what we do in every phase. Now, once that is created, you have to push the ownership of developing it and building it in workflow. So what we would do is, once all the critical talent, we would ensure that in their workflow, they're given a project which is really meaningful and that will help them grow. The other thing is you have to identify what are the skill gaps. So we identify the skill gaps are basically AI and all. Now AI sounds so esoteric or it sounds so scary, but AI is nothing but reading patterns. So we created a three-pronged strategy of how do you ensure that every pioneer knows what AI is, how can they use artificial intelligence, and then if you're really interested, you grow, take nano degrees and grow into it. Invested a lot in created the right platforms, the learning experience platforms that became extremely important in terms of not only the content you have, but how can you push the content based on the skill that is there. So what is different is the AI should be able to say, if I'm currently this role and if I want to go to the next role, what content do I need to have and how can social learning help that? So I think a massive change to the way I see things. And it is a combination of both culture and the content.
Gaurika, what is the story at Bennett Coleman like?
Well, we're media. So everything is about presenting, how you present it. And for us, learner experience it's all about EX now. So EX is experience. You wow the customer, whether it's external or internal. So I think what we've really focused on is the world is shifting for us, and we're the oldest form of media. We're the newspapers. I hope all of you are subscribing to Times of India and Economic Times. That's what you know us as. And you all know that media is moving really fast from print to digital, and interestingly now back to print, because the story that we are building is about credibility of the product, where there is no performance marketing. So nobody's trailing you. Nobody asks you what article you read first and why and for how long. So building on that story, we're also trying to empower the learners that we want you to learn, and what we will bring you is a digital library. We will bring you learning resources. You pick what you want to learn. And for us, what is important is what we really call CLIPS in our organization. It's an acronym for CLIPS, where C stands for commitment. That's where it all starts, that as an organization, we will invest in you, and that's a commitment. And the S ends with success measure, and that's really the story. So we will commit to providing you the infrastructure. We will commit to providing you the guidance. And in the end, we will look at success measure of how you really changed. In the middle, we are still looking at the traditional matrices of learning, where we say, okay, what is the learning per person, learning hours, learning money spent per person, all of that is measured. But what is more important is that we look at the learner experience score, which is the feedback that the learner gives us. We've got all the tools available. We are, like I think Ruchi was mentioning, the curation bit. So we have a lot of learning partners. We don't really invest so much in building content ourselves. We try and procure and pay the partner as per use from an organization perspective. From an individual perspective, we are matching because of all the data, and you talked about it, Kavita, the kind of data the learning team sits on is mind-blowing, because we get to see who is clicking what, because everything is digital. And we know what is being consumed, and therefore a lot of the learning analytics that have come in. So besides clips as a product that we give to the learner, for the learning team, we're sitting on 3 cornerstones. We're sitting on content, we're sitting on technology, and we're sitting on experience. And a triangle in this form, whatever we can do to make the interplay more meaningful for the individual as well as the organization, is pretty much the learning story for us.
Right, right. Yeah, data you mentioned, I think big data, but then the relevant data, there are a lot of layers to this. Ruchika, tell me your, how do you select the program for your employees? Also want to, understand that for you. And how do you build that culture part?
Sure, thanks, Ruhail. So coming from a service sector organization, the top line as well as the profitability of any company depends really on the value that the employees are creating for the end customers. So it's very, very important that employees are up to date, aware of the skills of the future and are future ready. So for us, how we do is that along with the people managers, we focus on their thriving and development on 3 broad areas. One is on the skill set that they require for performing with more productivity and effectively on the current role. Second, for taking up next level role, that could either be vertically, that is upwards, or horizontally, maybe a cross-functional role in some other function, some other stint. And the third area is the aspirations that the particular employee has. So on these 3 parameters, current level, next level, and the aspirations that the person has, we sit down along with the people manager and evaluate that, we should be focusing on upskilling of this person. So the approach for learning that we adopt is like the co-panelists just mentioned broadly, a blended learning approach after the COVID especially is being adopted. But one specific intervention that I would like to share is that we have started is around reimagining the careers of our select employees across levels, wherein we give these employees an opportunity to take up a cross-functional stint or a short project in some other function so that they can relook at their career differently as compared to what they would have ever thought.
Suvendu, I remember kuch saal pehle, people used to say, sabse best job is HR, aaram se job. Fir COVID aaya and they were at the forefront of dealing with every crisis, And now it's changing to becoming a CEO conversation, as Ashish said. Coziness and all is no longer there. Now, you have to deliver impactful. So how do you make it, how do you ensure, it delivers the results now?
So being a practicing HR person, I don't think HR was always a cool function. It was...
I'm an outside perception. I'm telling you an outside perception.
Because it's a very infinite world that you deal with if you're a HR person, You are dealing with people at a psychological level, at a professional level, at an emotional level. And to have a convergence around this infinite world and make it something finite is a very challenging work for any HR professional. But in the past, HR was not so metrics driven. The kind of MIS HR used to produce was very basic. But today it has all changed, whether it is inclusion, diversity, whether it is time to hire, what kind of, learning you are doing, whether there is actually a transfer of learning. So, when I was producing MIS for learning team in my early days, we were just saying how many programs done and program effectiveness. To actually now we are saying whether there is the level 4 Kirkpatrick's, there is a transfer of learning and which we are trying to measure through OJT. So training used to end in the past with a classroom or whatever module based. But today, you are saying that, okay, let there be a cohort, let there be a project, and let us measure how it is impacting the business. So there is a lot of analytics which has come into HR. It is also predictive. We are looking at, making predictions about the workforce movements, about where you may lose people. And I think that's a very, very significant change, which has made HR central to the business in today's time.
Wonderful. Kavita, your ABP story and building that culture of continuous learning. how do you make sure it happens?
So for us, media, news media, 70% of workforce on the ground zero, you arrange a program, call them for a training program, and says, you know what, this person got arrested and I have to be there. What do you say? So I think what we did was, I went back to the drawing board. And I must be honest, I joined here 3 years back. And all my training program initially were like a total disaster. I would think of ways of doing it, and suddenly I would see some priority of business taking over. But then I realized that we need to completely change it. So honestly, if you see on-roll employee strength, it's largely around 1,500 people. We've customized 1,500 assessment center, and it is not funny. It's done throughout completely with an AI-driven software. It's our LMS model that we've internally developed. For 1,500 people, your competencies are all defined. Each one of you for the role required. And these are not the book competency, but the real life needed role-based competencies. And each one of them actually goes through their own assessment at the beginning of the year. Once you do your assessment, you would pick up 2 or 3 competencies where your numbers are low, and that is impacting your business. You sit with the business head, and this is with minimum intervention. It's only that this curriculum and these discussions have been standardized. You actually go through it, and the learning journey is yours. After that, it's your system which keeps sending you nudges, your online learning, your 21-day habit. And then there is a lot of peer-to-peer learning, because it's like your Fitbit or any other app you use. There's a learning marathon that gets created. And you know that there are maybe 70 people across the country who are going through the same competency learning, and these are the things they've done. They get completely, it's a cloud-based thing again. They can connect with them, and there is a classroom learning happening for them. It's more peer-to-peer. The best thing that happened was there's nobody monitoring. These skills, what we are talking about, is everyday use skill, and they are getting applauded and appreciated for every program that they complete. If they're not completing, there is no pulling up happening. Year 1, my adoption ratio was about 30%. Year 2, it has gone to 70%. This year, I intend to close it at 99%. I only believe that we've been able to, the impact of it has been huge. We've been able to impart trainings like Mojo training for a reporter. Today, the biggest cost that we incur is on coverage of a news item. Simply, if there is a breaking news, there has to be a cameraman, there has to be a crew, there has to be a reporter, and there's a full tamjam that goes with it. All gone. Take your mobile, go shoot, and transfer the data. But how do you shoot? And shoot in a quality where it is up in the air, as in the TV screen. So, that training was so important, and it was an 8 weeks program these guys went through. I've done 5 rounds of it, because channel by channel, we've been able to move. So there's a direct impact of it in business. The cost has gone up. There was fear among people, we'll be redundant. So, you can pick up skills, you can tell them that this is what the world is moving to, and this is where you're going. So we've been able to create some of the programs which are first in the industry, because they're all curated. I actually relate with, because the skills of our L&D team has completely changed. It's no more HR guys doing L&D. L&D is a function in its own. So design thinking, curating content, and ensuring that customer experience is high is something that each L&D guy has to do.
Very well said. And, I think TV itself is one of the most, where people face a lot of stress, and then getting them to, have this program, itself takes a lot of efforts, right? Yeah. So we have some 7 minutes. I would like to have one question and maybe open up to the audience if time permits. Ashish, to you. So we all now agreed that it has become a centerpiece and the most important conversation in the organization. From here, what next? Where does it go from here on? Say, I'll just take 2 years' time, not more than that, according to you.
I think the journey has just started. And from 2 years, it's going to be more newer things that will come in. I think the one big realization that will come in is you cannot keep on buying talent, so to build talent. I'll just take an example. If we are a payment gateway company and my sales guys have to sell payment gateway solutions to large merchants like an Amazon, Flipkart, and so many other web front that is opening or storefront that is opening, the availability of that talent is so less. So the understanding of today, employee needs to understand the product, tech, sales, everything when they're doing. Can you really get so many such talent in the market? The answer is no. So you have to create the joy of learning in the work that they are going to do on a day-to-day basis. So one thing that will change dramatically is that training will never be that one-day affair or two-day affair. It is an everyday affair. When you're coming to work, you're learning something new, you're building your muscle, and you're being challenged, and you are being curious. That is fundamentally, that is gonna change. Second thing that is gonna change is we will see technology playing even bigger role. Today, if you want to simulate an environment, you have to still perhaps get a physical environment in place. With metaverse coming in, the ability to simulate an environment will be very, very high. So the way you adapt or drive learning will be very, very different. The third important thing will be you in about a few years, you will have a generation of employees with different Gen Zs, Gen X, whatever you call in, but you will have a massive talent which is just digitally native. So to a digitally native talent and a talent just which wants choice at every point, you have to make your learning available on go at any time and relevant to them, which we can use it at that point of time. Training is no longer about listening to something and doing it 3 years hence. It is about listening it now or doing it now. That's going to fundamentally change. The time propensity between knowing and doing is going to fundamentally reduce.
It'll be interesting to see metaverse avatars of employees also, maybe, Gaurika?
So I think I second everything, Ashish, that you said. The only addition I will have here is that learning has to divide itself from awareness to deep dive. And so these bite size that just gets you hooked and interested, because technology, the digital transformation, as what everybody's been talking about, is so disruptive. By the time you train somebody up to level 3, the technology is changed. So it's extremely important that, so we've started something called social learning and peer-to-peer learning. It's more about, I did this today, I learned, you learn, and then let's move on. Because and for us as an organization, it's extremely important because, Kavita, I was smiling every time you were saying something, we're in the same industry, that for us, we are transforming as an organization because we are saying we are no longer just in the business of news, but we're also in the business of content. And that is when you start curating content. A traditional journalist who's only used to writing in the newspaper has to now blog. So the world has changed. It's disrupted in such a way that we need to upskill people. And more so, they need to upskill themselves to stay relevant. And therefore, this ownership of learning slowly is going to transfer to the learner, because I think, Suvendu, you were talking about the fact that it's no longer structured. I can't tell you what learning you have to do. At the end of the day, you figure out, and I think, Ruchi, that matches to what you were saying in terms of reimagining career, because no organization is going to be able to retain the workforce if you don't give them the change that they seek. So therefore, to enable it, we have to tell you, okay, you decide what job you want. This is what the job will require. And to your point, Kavita, it's about assessment. You assess yourself and figure out your own opportunity area. The organization really doesn't want to know what you can't do. You tell us what you want to do. We will give you the opportunity. You do it and you take the job. And that is where this new generation, and I think, Ashish, to your point about Gen Z is coming in, because what they will want from their job is very different from what probably our generation and the generation above wanted. Now they're talking purpose. And if they're talking purpose, they're talking about, okay, I will do 6 hours of work. What do I do next? And therefore, it is important that we tell you, if you want to do this, you can do this quick course, do that certification yourself. We'll sponsor you. Come back, do it, take the job, and move on. So I think it's an amalgam. It's a really imaginative world there. And for the learning professional to be able to, we will move into being a marketing function, actually. You've got a product and then you have consumers, they've got to pick it up, and then you know that you're adding value.
Absolutely. Ruchi, quick words from you.
Yeah. Very interesting thoughts, Gaurika and Ashish. The only addition I would like to make here is that two bases, that over the past 2 years in COVID, most of the trainings have been in the digital format. So basis the feedback that we have received from our employees, a sense of human touch, is going missing. And in the times to come, when we are going to rely more and more on virtual reality, artificial intelligence for trainings, so how we strike the balance between the technology and the human touch while we develop our employees for their holistic development will be important.
Quickly, at two levels. One is at the business level, how I prepare my workforce, my business to deal with disruption. I think should be the new agenda for the L&D professionals. And secondly, to redefine, and I think you've talked about Generation Z, that what is my new target group? Span of attention has reduced. We talked about WhatsApp. English has gone really bad, the kind of English we write today, because thanks to WhatsApp.
Emails, they reflect in emails also.
Yeah, it reflects very poorly in emails, absolutely. So people don't read, they don't have the time to read, they've lost that skill, they are not writing much. So what is my target group? And how will they learn what I want to give them? Through the behaviors that they demonstrate. So they have been born with an iPad. So we need to go back and, reimagine that. That, if I have to really impart L&D, some learning, some capability building, whether I need to use whatever, artificial intelligence or robotics or gamification or something else which will work with them. Yeah, thank you.
Kavita, final words.
Well, I think largely everything has been said. Thanks to all. But I think just one point that comes to my mind is 2 years down the line, or maybe anytime soon, the way we are moving, I think it's all about talent stacking. Each person who's working in the system is going to be a unique talent in itself. And they'll all be working on skill stackings. Because it's not just, I am an X person, I'm an HR person and I can only do HR. I may be doing 2 or 5 other things. So people are actually now building a huge fatigue from what they've been doing. So 20 years, you've been doing an X job, you want to move on. So this whole piece, like you rightly mentioned, giving space and exploring, creating open organizations where people actually, a graphic designer can also be working in your videos team. Or for that matter, a cameraman can also be double hatting for something else within the system. If we don't allow those kind of learning opportunity and experimenting opportunity, as in performing, then we'll be losing out our people very soon. Somebody else will pick it. So I think for us to be more open-minded, for us as organizations to be more liberal and recreating a non-hierarchical structure, which is more at learning enabling. And every single day, the journey is around, let's talk what's new we've done. I think that's where the future is leading to all of us. Thank you.
Thank you so much. What a wonderful panel. And we've come to the end of this panel. Can't take any questions, but can we have a round of applause for my panelists?